All right, today we're tackling a big one, failure. We're going to do a deep dive into how to completely transform our relationship with it. The goal here isn't just about surviving setbacks. It's about rewiring our thinking so we actually benefit from them, to turn our biggest mistakes into our greatest sources of strength. So let's get into it.
So let me start with a question. Have you ever wondered why even a tiny mistake, saying the wrong thing in a meeting or messing up a small task, can feel like a punch to the gut? Why does it trigger this powerful, almost physical sense of dread? Well, the answer, it turns out, is buried deep, deep in our evolutionary past.
And that brings us to our first section. Before we can even think about building a new playbook for dealing with failure, we have to get to the bottom of why it hurts so much in the first place. Okay, so this is really the core of it. Our brains are basically running on ancient software. I mean, think about it. For our ancestors, being abandoned by the tribe wasn't just embarrassing, it was a death sentence. You couldn't survive alone. So our brains developed this incredibly powerful social radar called shame. Its whole job was to prevent that. So now, when we fail today, even in a small way, that same ancient alarm system goes off, screaming that our very survival is at risk. But we have to get really clear on something important here. It's crucial to separate two feelings that often get lumped together. On one side, you have guilt. Guilt is actually pretty useful. It's focused on your behavior. You think, I did a bad thing, and that feeling motivates you to fix it. But then there's toxic shame. And shame is all about your identity. It makes you think, I am bad. You see the difference? Guilt is about the action. Shame is about the actor. Guilt pushes you to repair, but shame just paralyzes you.
And the fallout from that toxic shame, it's no joke. When we don't process failure, it doesn't just feel bad, it actively messes with our brains. It completely distorts our decision-making. It makes us terrified of taking risks. It can even lead to this weird thing called self-handicapping. That's where you subconsciously create obstacles for yourself just so you have a built-in excuse for when you fail. It can even trigger a grief response that's literally as powerful as losing a loved one.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. We know why it hurts. Now let's build the solution. In this next section, we're going to talk about a whole new playbook, a set of tools and frameworks you can use to systematically rewire your response to setbacks. So the first tool in the toolbox is a super simple but really powerful mental switch. Just reframe the word F.A.I.L to mean first attempt in learning. See how that shifts things? Instantly, failure stops being this final, terrible verdict on your abilities, and it just becomes part of the process. It's just a data point on a longer journey of learning. But here's where we need to get a little more sophisticated, because just saying fail fast isn't enough. The truth is, not all failures are created equal. And if we really want to get good at this, we have to understand that different kinds of failure require totally different responses. Let's break that down. Harvard researcher Amy Edmondson has this brilliant framework that lays it all out. She says there are basically 3 types of failure. First, you've got your basic failures. This is like forgetting to attach a file to an email. It's an avoidable mistake in a known process. The right move? Just catch it and correct it. No big deal. Then you have complex failures. This happens when a bunch of new factors come together in an unexpected way and the whole system breaks down. The key here is not to blame someone, but to analyze the whole system. But then you have intelligent failures. These are the good ones. This is what happens when you run a thoughtful experiment into something new and it doesn't pan out. These are the failures we should actually be sharing and celebrating because they're packed with valuable information. All right, this brings us to what is maybe the single most important skill in this entire process. We're going to talk about how to separate your sense of self, your identity, from your performance. This technique is an absolute game changer. It's called self-distancing, and it sounds almost too simple to work, but here's what you do. When you're thinking about a failure, instead of asking, why did I screw up, you switch to the third person. You use your own name. So you'd ask, why did Steve screw up? That tiny little linguistic shift creates just enough psychological space for you to look at the situation like an objective observer without getting hijacked by all that emotion. And here's the wild part. Brain scans actually show that this works. This simple trick dials down the emotional reactivity in your brain, but, and this is key, it does it without draining your mental energy. It's like an incredibly efficient way to regulate your emotions, freeing up your brain power to actually learn from what happened, even when you're feeling stressed out. Want a really practical way to put this into practice? Try this exercise. You create a failure resume. Seriously. You make a document where you list your biggest screw-ups, your biggest professional mistakes, and right next to each one, you write down exactly what you learned from it. What this does is it structurally separates the event from your identity. The failure just becomes another line item on your journey, a source of hard-won wisdom, not a source of shame. So, we've learned how to process failure, we've learned how to protect our sense of self. Now we're ready for the final step. This is where we go beyond just bouncing back from failure and learn how to actually become anti-fragile. Now, this is a really important difference. Resilience is awesome, right? It's like a rubber ball. You get squeezed, you take a hit, and you bounce right back to your original shape. But anti-fragility, that's a whole other level. Anti-fragility is like a muscle. When it gets stressed and torn, it doesn't just heal back to where it was. It heals back stronger. The shock doesn't just fail to break you, it actually makes you better. And if you're thinking, well, that's just a personality trait you're born with, check this out. It is absolutely a skill you can learn. In one study of almost 24,000 people, just a bit of targeted training increased the number of people who were considered anti-fragile by 4 times. So this is not something you either have or you don't, it's a mindset you can actively build. So how do you train it? Well, one of the best ways is something called the barbell strategy. The idea is you put the vast majority of your resources, let's say 85%, into things that are super safe, super stable. That's your safety net that protects you from ruin. And then you take the other 15% and you put it into really aggressive, high-risk but potentially high-reward experiments. This structure lets you play with those intelligent failures without risking catastrophe. And you can apply this barbell idea to pretty much everything. In your career, it's the stable 9-to-5 job plus a wild, speculative side hustle. In your fitness, it's mostly long, easy walks combined with a few all-out, max-effort sprints. And for your mind, it's building a rock-solid, secure sense of self-worth that lets you play with really audacious, risky ideas. You cap your downside, but your upside is unlimited. There's this beautiful Japanese art form called kintsugi that just captures this idea perfectly. When a piece of pottery breaks, they don't throw it away. They repair the cracks with lacquer mixed with powdered gold. The philosophy is that the piece isn't just fixed, it's now more beautiful and more valuable because it was broken. The scars are celebrated as part of its unique history. That right there is the anti-fragile mindset. Okay, we've gone through the theory, the mindset, the strategies. For this last section, let's pull it all together into a really clear, actionable protocol that you can use the very next time you face a setback. Here it is, a simple 4-step protocol. Number 1, reflect. Set a timer for 15 minutes and just let yourself feel the frustration or disappointment. But, and this is key, talk to yourself about it using that third-person, self-distanced language. Step 2, learn. Now you become a scientist. Get all the data out of your head and onto a piece of paper. What happened? What were the variables? What type of failure was this? Basic, complex, intelligent? Step 3, grow. Imagine it's 5 years from now. Look back and think about how this specific failure was actually a crucial stepping stone to get you where you needed to go. Then design a new habit or system based on that insight. And finally, step 4, take action. Take complete ownership, get back in the game, and let the emotion go. So that brings us to the end. We've seen how that deep fear of failure is really just an echo from our ancient past, but it's an echo we can learn to manage. We can use these frameworks to go from being broken by failure to actually being made stronger by it. So I'll leave you with this to think about. What intelligent failure, what thoughtful, valuable experiment into new territory are you going to pursue this week?